Hello and welcome back to the Apprentice Program podcast. Today we're going to be talking about overcoming obstacles as an apprentice. My name is Mante. I'm currently a vulnerability analyst here at Computacenter. I work within the group information services, and I originally joined Computacenter over 2 years ago as a level 4 business analyst. Today with me I have Halima, another host of the podcast, and a special guest, Paris.
Hi everyone, my name is Halima. I am currently working towards a level 3 business administration apprenticeship. I've actually got my exams coming up, same as Paris, and I'm a year and a month into the role.
My name's Paris. I work the same place as Halima. I'm also doing the same apprenticeship, business admin level 3, and I work within GTS, which is group technology sourcing, and my exam's actually this week. So yeah, quite far along.
That's quite a stressful situation to be in.
For sure.
So the first question I have for all of us is, what's an obstacle you've recently or throughout your time as an apprentice that you've faced that's caused like issues and affected your workload?
Do you want to start?
Okay, yeah, sure. I would probably start off with saying my actual workload in general. Because when you first start off as an apprentice, it can be quite gradual to pick up on speed of the amount of work that you get, and that can be quite good. And then at some points you think things are going a bit slowly, which at first can be like, oh, I'm not being used that much. But I think as an apprentice, that time really needs to be utilized, because when you start getting further into your role and busier, and the workload really picks up, and sometimes it's kind of crazy and hard to navigate. That is definitely something that I've gone through with the accounts that I work on, because they're quite busy accounts. Yeah, basically balancing my workload and prioritizing things. I would say sometimes when everything is urgent, it's really hard to sort of think, what do I start off with? Because it can be quite overwhelming. But just like making a checklist or making a post-it note of what needs to be done and just starting on something helps, because as I said, it can be quite overwhelming. But you have to know that you can only do what you can do. That's what I always say. And when you're really stressed, it's hard to sort of understand that. But I literally every day say to myself, I can only do what I can do, and I know I'm doing a good job at what I'm doing. So you just got to like keep it up. But definitely your workload can be very stressful. But also you've got to communicate with your team. If you're getting too much work, or if you're not getting enough work, you would have to communicate that like people aren't going to read your mind. But they'll try to help you out as much as possible. But obviously workload is like your whole job. So at times it's going to pick up, at times it's going to be quieter. But definitely appreciate the times when it's quiet. Don't take that for granted. That's what I would say, 100%. Yeah. But yeah, that's workload.
Yeah, cool. Similar to the point that you're making about kind of communicating with team leaders and managers about the workload that you have. A challenge that I faced throughout my apprenticeship was when starting, and still now to be fair, I've been allocated to an account team that's up in Scotland, which is quite different to the rest of the other apprentices, because everybody else's team leaders are either in Blackfriars or in Hatfield. So it's a lot easier to communicate or kind of meet up in person. Whereas with me, it's obviously that much harder because of the location of where they are. So that's definitely a challenge I had, because I felt like it was a bit harder to communicate on Teams. But one way I dealt with that was by booking like meetings in with my line manager and my team leader. And if it wasn't happening, just making sure that I am chasing up on it. I think starting off as an apprentice, it's quite intimidating, reaching out to senior managers. But I think just pushing yourself and doing that and having constant conversations just makes it that much easier for future conversations that you have with them. So yeah. And you, Mante, any challenges?
So for me, especially as an apprentice, I had some mental health issues. It did stop me with my apprenticeship at times. I had to take like a break, a few weeks here and there, or just days off work overall. So then obviously my workload slowed down, stuff piled up, but all of it kind of helped getting like resources, external and internal, communicating with my managers. I know mental health is kind of a taboo in the workplace, but giving managers and your team awareness rather than just being open and being, hey, here are all my issues, the awareness of like, hey, there's things going on, I won't be present all the time. That's probably one of the biggest and still an ongoing issue I struggle with as an apprentice, and now an ex-apprentice and a full-time employee.
Yeah.
So how did you actually, you said you set up meetings with your team. How did you get that piece of advice that you should be setting up regular meetings with your team members? Did it come from coworkers, through online resources?
Yeah, I would say that advice actually came from senior managers themselves. So quite often we have one-to-ones. It's obviously up to your team leader how often you have it. But I have it every month, once a month. And when I was having those, I kind of communicated any issues I was having. And at that point, it felt like there was a bit of lack of communication, and I was sure to communicate that. And as a result of me communicating that, we then changed the one-to-ones to then having them weekly, which I think really helped me just form a better kind of connection with my team leader. So yeah.
And when you communicate, do you keep it like strictly like work based, or do you try to get to know your team members more on a personal level, like understand who they are as a person, or do you keep it just strictly professional?
I would say in like the first month or so, because we had just started and we obviously don't know these people very well, we did keep it quite professional and quite formal. But I think the more that you have these conversations, little things will kind of slip in here and there about your personal life, and it just becomes a lot easier to talk about personal things rather than just always keeping it about work. And then I think having those conversations, it then makes it so much more easier to approach them about other things. Like, for example, if you need annual leave or whatever it is, or if you're going through something personally, or if you've got any mental health problems or whatever, having more open conversations makes it much easier for more difficult conversations, let's say, that can happen in the future.
That's great.
Yeah. How would you say your relationship is with your team leader?
Yeah, my team leader was previously based in Hatfield, so that was great for me. So it was pretty easy to approach them and have regular communication with them. As I said, I think it was, as Halima mentioned, I think it was slightly easier to communicate with them because they were there, so you could speak to them about their personal life, and then work, I think, a bit sooner than if they were remote. But recently I've changed accounts, so I've now got a new team leader, and she's actually based in Blackfriars, which still isn't that far away. And I can go up and visit her, so that's fine. But now, obviously, because I'm further into the role, I'm more confident, so I'd be happy to speak to her on Teams or in person, as opposed to when you just started and you can be a bit nervous. And I'm trying to keep things basically professional because it's all about first impressions. So I totally get where you came from when you first started. But definitely easier for me now that I've been in the role for more than a year now, to communicate with those like team leaders and senior management. So yeah.
Especially with your exam, I think you mentioned it's this week on Thursday. There must be a ton of stress and pressure. How are you dealing with all of it?
Yeah, I was dealing with the pressure pretty well, I think. Yeah, I don't really feel pressure that much, if I'm being honest. No, but basically, I take a study day once a week as part of my apprenticeship. I actually took 2 study days this week because my exam is this week. So I'm going to take another one on tomorrow, and I'll be working from home so I can focus on that. Yeah, the pressure is honestly, again, it's about prioritizing because at the moment, my job role is super, super busy, and I'm trying to help out as much as I can. But then I also have to remind myself that my exam is also really important, and it's the main reason why I'm here, which is to get my qualification. So I really do have to prioritize and put first my exam, which is coming up, and it's literally only in 2 days. So yeah, basically putting that at the forefront of what I need to focus on, and realizing that although my job is important, this is more important, as my manager and my team leaders do remind me.
And what about you, Halima? How about when you're in a very stressful situation? How do you go about dealing with it?
So I would say one thing that I normally do is I just go for a walk, honestly. So our office is obviously quite big, and there's quite a big amount of space outside as well, like surrounding the building. So normally what I do is I just ask any of my colleagues near me if they want to go for a walk, and usually that does help me. And if not, then one resource that we actually have available throughout the company is there's a lot of mental health first aiders, and it's very easy to approach them. They normally have like a green lanyard or some sort of symbol to show that you can approach them to talk about mental health, and we also have pictures displayed on posters on our floor of who you can kind of reach out to if you've got any problems that you want to talk about. I've not personally gone to anybody yet, but it's definitely a resource that's available there that I would be open to kind of exploring. So yeah, those are definitely two ways that you could go about stressful situations. So what about you, Mante? What do you do in times of stress?
Definitely a big cup of hot chai just helps relieve some of the nerves, to calm down, decompose for a bit, take a step back, like you said, Paris as well. Um, Definitely making a list of everything that's stressing me out as well, and reaching out to my managers or any co-workers. Even after we had a team call or one-to-one, I'll be like, hey, this came up on my mind. Are you able to help me with this? And usually it's a very supportive team. So they'll gladly take stuff off your plate if you need that extra, like, let's say a few more minutes or a few hours, because you can't do a meeting, they'll cover it for you, stuff like that. That's usually what I do, and it's usually quite helpful. I know I have reached out to the mental first aiders out here in CC, and it's a skill, I think, like a program I feel like more companies should have in place, or even just local communities as well.
Yeah.
It's an amazing thing, and I feel like just talking about it sometimes helps.
Yeah, for sure. And yourself, Paris, in terms of stress, how do you kind of slow things down and deal with it?
Yes, in times of stress, I tend to sort of, well, if I'm in the office,
Yeah.
sometimes all the everything going on around you can be kind of distracting. So you've got everything going around you, and then you're really stressed out about your work and everything. For me, I usually like to put on my headphones or my earplugs and just like focus in on my work, but have music on in the background. That's how I'm good at focusing, and that will help me to sort of chill out a little bit. But yeah, or we go on walks together basically.
Yeah.
We literally be like, should go take 5 minutes and go
Yeah.
on a walk.
And it does help, doesn't it? Just kind of getting out of the environment where you are stressed
Oh,
out.
100%.
Leaving that environment, it does really help you kind of clear your mind and be ready to come back in and really focus. So yeah.
Yeah. And just not looking at your screen.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
Even if you don't go on a walk, you don't have to physically go on a walk, leave the building. Just go somewhere which isn't in front of a laptop, in front of a screen.
Yeah. We are, to be fair, like we're advised to actually leave our screens and kind of take regular breaks, because we're obviously working loads of hours and constantly looking at one screen. We're advised to kind of like, whether it's just going up and down the office or actually leaving the floor or whatever it is, taking a break from the screen is super important, not just for like your eye health, but for your mental health as well. I think is really important. So yeah,
for sure.
So I know you guys are part of a massive cohort, and now your department has a new cohort of new apprentices. What would you say is a common mistake new apprentices do that set them up for obstacles in the future?
I would say it's not really a mistake, but more of basically, I would say that when you're an apprentice and you're new to a workplace, especially here, your line manager really encourages. Our line manager used to encourage us to network with people, and sort of get your name out there and speak to different people and learn about their job roles. But as an apprentice, every time you're being told this, it can become a little bit overwhelming, because you'll see a room full of people and think, oh, I've got to speak to everyone. 100%, exactly. And then it can just be, and it can be overwhelming. But I would say, instead of thinking, oh, I've got a room full of people, I need to speak to all of them, just set yourself a goal, even to speak to 2 people in the room and get their names and find out what they do. Even 1 person, literally any reasonable goal. And then if you speak to 3 people, even 2 people, you can feel happy with yourself, because you've gone and set that goal.
Yeah.
So definitely not feeling overwhelmed when people encourage you to do things, but just set small, like, achievable goals.
Yeah, for sure.
And then that
applies to everything.
100%,
Just meeting people, it's in terms of work as well. Like, set yourself realistic objectives for the day, not overwhelming yourself with your workload, especially when you're so new into the business. It can really overwhelm you and kind of set you backwards, rather than having a positive effect.
100%.
And on the flip side to what you were saying, another thing, when you're nervous about meeting new people, don't put it off for too long, I would probably say. I think it's really easy to do that. Like, I know with me, I'll just keep putting it off and be like, yeah, I'll message them after lunch. I'll message them tomorrow. I'll message them next week. Whatever it is, the quicker that you do it, the quicker that it's out of the way, and it just makes things a lot less awkward. I think the longer period of time that you leave not doing it, it just makes things so much harder, because you're building up so much more pressure and tension.
For sure.
So yeah, I think that's a really common mistake that new apprentices can do, or even we did at the time when we started.
I feel like definitely putting too much pressure on yourself too early on, when you are an apprentice, commonly you're a young adult in a corporate world for the first time. and putting that too much pressure on yourself too soon, I feel like it leads to early burnout.
Yeah,
And then
for sure.
when you burn out, that's when you require more resources, your
Yeah.
workload gets affected, and everything around it as well. So overall, what's one piece of advice you would give to anyone in a new career, a new apprentice, or a current apprentice that's going through like a career change?
One form of advice that I would give is make sure to speak your mind. I think we're really lucky in the sense where we're in a company where they kind of promote to speak your mind and really address any issues that you have.
Yeah.
So I would say one advice is address any issues from early on, because like I mentioned earlier, the longer that you let it sit, the worse it'll only get. So yeah, from early, if you've got any issues, just communicate it, whether it's to your line manager or even a colleague at first. Maybe start off small and start by
Yeah.
discussing it with somebody that you're comfortable with, and then go on to progressing and speaking about it to someone that is more senior and that can actually help kind of make an effect or change the situation. But definitely speak your mind if you've got an issue, or else nobody will know and nothing will change. So
Yeah, for some advice I would give, I would probably say, like your work-life balance. You have to set out a standard for yourself within your work-life balance, basically, because obviously you're new and you want to be as proactive as you can, and you want to do all the work that you can do that you're physically able to do. But with alongside that, you're setting a pattern of behaviors that you're going to follow. So early on, if you start setting bad behaviors, not necessarily bad behaviors, but maybe not great for
Taboo behaviors.
exactly. If you start working late, even though you could just wait and leave it for the next day, or not taking breaks early on, you're going to set that pattern of behavior, and that's going to be sort of lead towards a downward spiral, and that's not great. That's not great for your mental health, not great for your energy levels, not great for productivity. So I would say work. It's great. It's a big part of your life, but it's not everything. And you got to stay grounded and realize you have a life outside of your workplace. Most other people have a life outside of their workplace. So basically, I would just say, set out boundaries and your work-life balance. And some people have Teams on their phones or their watches. That's a personal choice. But I would just say, yeah, life is separate from work, and keep that separate and set boundaries. And then you can keep that pattern, as opposed to not setting boundaries and then causing problems in the long run.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what I'd say.
That's great advice. Thank you so much. So that's all for this episode today. Thank you very much for listening, and do reach out to anyone if you're ever having any obstacles in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you.